In the world of missing children, there is this sort of statistical cliff, right?
Right, yeah, like a point of no return.
Exactly. If a child isn't located within those first few hours, the mathematical odds of a safe recovery, well, they just plummet exponentially.
It's a terrifying drop-off, honestly.
It really is. But what happens when you have a case that completely defies those critical initial hours? Because, like, the window of disappearance is just impossibly small.
Right, where there basically is no window.
Yeah, we are
Wow.
talking about an 8-year-old boy vanishing in a microscopic 15-minute window in the middle of the night, leaving a scent trail that literally evaporates at the front door.
It's completely baffling.
It is a total mathematical and investigative anomaly. So today we are heading to Clearwater, Florida. The date is September 11th, 2000.
For the disappearance of Zachary Michael Cole Bernhardt, which is, a mystery that has baffled investigators for over 2 decades now.
Yeah, and it currently stands as the longest-running Amber Alert in the entire history of Florida.
Which is just wild to think about.
Truly. And to understand how a sleeping child simply, ceases to be there. Because, before the media circus, there was just an 8-year-old third grader.
Just a normal kid.
Right. Zachary was a straight-A student. His teachers and family described him as a cheerful, goofy kid who really loved building sandcastles.
Yeah, and he also possessed several permanent physical identifiers, which we really need to highlight.
Oh, right, the scars.
Exactly. Zachary had a small scar under his chin, another scar on the bridge of his nose directly between his eyebrows, and a third one on the right side of his upper lip.
Just really specific markers.
Very specific. And keep those markers in mind, because they become crucial to the long-term search strategy that we will discuss later.
Okay, so the foundation of this entire mystery really rests on the timeline of Sunday, September 10th, leading into the very early hours of Monday, September 11th.
Right? The timeline is everything here.
It really is. So Zachary lived with his single mother, Leah Hackett, in the Savannah Trace apartment complex in Clearwater. Leah worked the night shift, so her internal circadian rhythm was completely flipped.
Yeah, she was essentially nocturnal.
Right. Even on her days off, she was wide awake while the rest of the Florida coast was totally asleep.
And they had spent a totally normal Sunday together.
Yeah.
Right. Like they played outside, watched a movie on the couch.
Just a standard weekend.
Yeah. And because it was late, Leah let Zachary sleep in her bed. He fell asleep around 11:00 p.m.
Okay.
From there, between 2 a.m. and 4:00 a.m., Leah's movements become the absolute focal point of the investigation.
This is where things get really heavily scrutinized.
Exactly. Around 2 a.m., she decides to take the trash to the complex dumpster, and she chooses to drive her car the short distance rather than walk.
Okay, let's unpack this timeline. Because, like you said, the details are picked apart by everyone. Driving to the dumpster in a sprawling Florida apartment complex in the middle of a humid night, I mean, that makes a certain amount of logistical sense.
Sure, it's safer, it has air conditioning.
Right. But then, between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., Leah goes for a walk around the complex to burn off energy, and then she decides to go for a swim in the community pool, fully clothed, at 4 in the morning.
Yeah, that's the part that catches everyone's attention.
It's wild. She doesn't put on a swimsuit, she doesn't grab a towel, she just gets into the pool in her regular clothes, does a few laps, and gets out. And crucially, like most importantly, she leaves the apartment front door unlocked the entire time.
Completely unlocked. And when she returns to the apartment, she's soaking wet. The air conditioning is running, making her freezing cold in those wet clothes.
Literally.
So she bypasses the bedroom entirely, jumps straight into a hot shower to warm up, and only after exiting the shower does she check the bed and realize Zachary is missing.
I have to stop you there and push back on this sequence of events, honestly.
I get it. It sounds strange.
Right. Like, I understand the night shift lifestyle, but a fully clothed swim at 4 a.m. without a towel? I am really struggling to reconcile that. It feels completely counterintuitive to basic comfort.
It definitely stands out.
And then leaving the door unlocked. How does an 8-year-old vanish in a 15-minute window while his mom is doing laps? It's like a locked room mystery where the room was actually left wide open for a fraction of a second.
What's fascinating here is how behavioral science views actions that seem bizarre to an outside observer.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, in periods of extreme exhaustion or, atypical circadian rhythms, people often engage in sensory-seeking behavior to wake themselves up or just calm themselves down.
Oh, like a cold plunge or something?
Exactly. A sudden shock of cold water makes physiological sense if you were trying to regulate a sleep-deprived nervous system.
Huh, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, so regardless of how unusual it seems to us, she immediately called 911 at 4:47 a.m. The police arrived almost instantly,
Well,
and they brought highly trained scent-tracking dogs.
and the dogs found absolutely nothing outside the apartment.
Right. They picked up Zachary's scent inside the bedroom, but the trail abruptly stopped at the front door threshold.
Like a dead
A
end.
complete dead end. And to understand why that matters, we have to look at how scent tracking actually works. Humans constantly shed microscopic skin cells, which are often called rafts.
Rafts, like little boats.
Yeah, exactly. And we shed them at a rate of about 40,000 cells per minute.
Wow, 40,000 a minute? That is a lot.
It is. As we walk, we basically leave a continuous, invisible snow globe of these cells behind us.
Okay, so if a child wakes up and just wanders off into an apartment complex, that snow globe of skin cells creates a continuous path for the dogs to follow?
Precisely. The scent ending directly at the threshold scientifically implies the snow globes stop dropping cells onto the ground.
Meaning he didn't walk out.
Right. The child didn't walk out. He was either carried, maybe wrapped in something like a blanket that contained the shedding cells, or placed directly into a vehicle parked inches from the door.
Which shifts the investigative spotlight with blinding speed. I mean, if the timeline is a microscopic 15-minute window at 4 a.m. and the scent trail suggests the child didn't leave on his own 2 feet, public attention naturally pivoted to the only other person in that apartment.
Yeah, unfortunately, that happens a lot.
The internet true crime sleuths on Reddit just tore into Leah's history. They found she had a somewhat transient lifestyle.
That's made up everything.
Oh, everything. They found she had previously lost custody of her older daughter in Michigan after disappearing for a weekend. So they zeroed in on the 4 a.m. fully clothed swim, the unlocked door, and the immediate shower. They were like questioning if she was washing away evidence.
Because to them, the math doesn't add up.
Exactly. They argue the mathematical odds of a random kidnapper checking her door in that specific 15-minute window are just astronomically low.
But, you also have a vocal contingent defending her.
Right, there are two sides to this online debate.
Yes, family members and former teachers went on record describing Leah as an incredibly loving, devoted mother. They point out that leaving a door unlocked in an apartment complex you feel secure in really wasn't unheard of in the year 2000.
Yeah, it was a different time.
And they view her as a grieving victim of a crime of opportunity, someone whose worst mistake was just compounded by unimaginable bad luck, who was then intensely persecuted by online mobs.
And let's be crystal clear to you, our listener, right now. In this deep dive, we are imparting the data and the source material completely objectively.
Yes, completely neutral.
We are absolutely not taking a side on the mother's guilt or innocence. Our goal here is to show you how public perception and the total absence of physical evidence warp an investigation. Because Leah was eventually driven entirely out of the public eye by this scrutiny.
It was just too much.
Yeah, she relocated to Hawaii, changed her last name to Hansen, and completely stopped cooperating with media requests.
Which is understandable. I mean, the psychological toll of being accused by strangers while suffering the ambiguous loss of a child is profound.
I can't even imagine. If you were in the crosshairs of public opinion while suffering the worst loss imaginable, how would you react?
It's a horrible position to be in. And to understand why investigators were so stumped, we really must consult the statistics provided by the FDLE and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
Right, let's get into the data.
First off, the FDLE explicitly dispels the Hollywood myth of a 24-hour waiting period to report a missing person.
Oh yeah, that is purely a movie trope.
Exactly. Leah calling 911 immediately was procedurally correct.
But the statistical reality of what happens next is incredibly grim, because NCMEC data shows that in long-term missing child cases, a staggering 98% involve either runaways or family abductions. 98%.
Almost all of them.
So law enforcement is looking at a case that completely resists easy categorization. I mean, the scent dog suggests he didn't run away, and Zachary's biological father didn't even know he existed until police contacted him.
Which completely rules out a paternal abduction.
Right. So we are forced into that terrifying 2% margin.
And this raises an important question. If the threat didn't originate inside the apartment, and it falls into that 2% margin of stranger abductions, we have to analyze the environment outside the front door.
Right. What's lurking outside?
Criminologists look at routine activity theory, which basically suggests a crime occurs when a motivated offender, a suitable target, and the absence of a capable guardian all intersect in time and space.
Like a perfect storm.
Exactly. And the Reddit researchers pointed out a deeply troubling environmental factor. The area surrounding the Savannah Trace apartment complex had a remarkably high density of registered sex offenders.
That brings us to a neighbor named Kevin Jalbert.
Oh, yeah, Jalbert.
Jalbert had a documented history of child abuse. And shortly after Zachary's disappearance, Jalbert actually bragged to an undercover police officer that he had kidnapped a boy from that exact apartment complex.
It's chilling.
And he failed a polygraph test. Investigators even found that he had visited a local landfill about 2 weeks after Zach vanished.
I mean, I am looking at these facts, and they scream guilt. How does someone confess to an undercover cop, fail a polygraph, visit a landfill, and not get charged?
I know, it sounds like an open and shut case. But we have to explore the psychology of false confessions, particularly among pathological individuals.
Okay, why would someone lie about that?
Well, when Jalbert led the undercover officer to the complex, he actually pointed to the wrong apartment.
Oh, wait, really?
Yes, and he gave completely inaccurate descriptions of the clothing Zachary was wearing. Plus, his DNA did not match anything found at the scene.
Wow. And his own sister told police he was a chronic liar who fabricated horrific stories just for attention.
Exactly. Pathological individuals often insert themselves into high-profile crimes to gain a sense of power or notoriety. They crave the attention of law enforcement.
That is so messed up. It is. Jalbert was later sentenced to 40 years in prison on completely unrelated charges of possessing and distributing child sexual abuse material. So he was absolutely a confirmed predator. But forensically, he is a frustratingly ambiguous figure in this specific timeline.
Okay, well, here's where it gets really interesting. Let's assume Jalbert was just lying for attention.
Yeah.
We still have to account for the predatory environment of that specific complex.
Right, the location itself.
Because fast forward to New Year's Eve 2001, a little over a year after Zachary vanished. A 5-year-old boy is playing outside with his friends at the exact same Savannah Trace apartment complex.
It's just unbelievable.
In broad daylight, a man snatches this 5-year-old right off the property. It is terrifying. It's like lightning striking the same apartment complex twice.
I have to ask, does this point to the complex being a known hunting ground for predators, or is it just a massive, terrifying coincidence?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture of how opportunistic predators hunt, they don't usually target random locations.
No, they target areas they are familiar with, areas with multiple exit routes, and areas where children congregate.
So they might have known the complex.
Yes, and the 2001 abduction was horrifying, but it ended with a recovery. The 5-year-old boy was found alive 10 hours later, left in a dumpster about 80 miles north of Tampa.
Thank goodness he survived, and he gave a highly specific description of the kidnapper, right?
I did.
He described the suspect's vehicle as a dirty white pickup truck featuring very distinct decals, like pictures of ice cream and decals of the pro wrestler Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Which is incredibly specific.
Very, and the suspect was a white male with shoulder-length black hair.
But the crazy thing is, the 2001 kidnapping remains officially unsolved to this day.
Seriously, with
Yeah.
a description like that.
Yeah, investigators have stated they haven't found concrete physical evidence connecting the white pickup truck to Zachary's case either.
That is so frustrating.
It is, but from a criminological standpoint, it proves that brazen, opportunistic child predators were actively operating in that exact location.
Right in their backyard.
Exactly. It forces you to consider the chilling possibility that if Leah Hackett left her door unlocked at 3:45 a.m., an offender wandering the complex, just checking handles in the dark, got freakishly, tragically lucky.
It's just a roll of the dice in the dark. Someone checks a handle and the door opens.
The nightmare scenario.
And then the calendar delivers another devastating blow to the investigation. The family had planned a massive candlelight vigil for the 1-year anniversary to keep Zachary's name in the press, keep people looking.
To keep the momentum going.
Right. But the date of that vigil was September 11th, 2001.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The 9/11 terrorist attacks completely consumed the global and national media apparatus. Zachary's case, which had been a major localized news story, was buried overnight.
And public memory is the lifeblood of a missing persons investigation.
Exactly. But the public was suddenly focused on an unprecedented national trauma.
So decades pass. The trail essentially goes cold. But the search doesn't stop, which is where advocacy groups like Protect Your Children, Inc. step in.
They do amazing work keeping these cases alive.
They do. And they recently highlighted a tantalizing lead on social media. An anonymous security guard working in Orlando, Florida, claimed to have actually interacted with Zachary Bernhardt in 2015 or 2016.
Which would make Zachary a young adult at that point.
Exactly. Organizations operating in this space fundamentally believe that long-term missing children might still be alive, just entirely unaware of their original identity.
Living a totally different life.
Right. And to combat this, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children relies heavily on forensic age progression. Zachary's image has been scientifically aged to what he would look like at 29 and now 34 years old.
Okay, but how reliable is that really? Like, how do you predict the facial structure of a 34-year-old man based on an 8-year-old school photo, especially without knowing anything about his environment or his diet or anything like that?
It's a great question. Forensic artists basically merge art with biological anthropology. They don't just guess.
It's more scientific than that.
Much more. They analyze photos of the biological parents at the target age. They understand the mechanics of cranial bone growth, like how a jawline squares off during male puberty or how the bridge of the nose elongates.
Oh, so they're using genetics as a map.
Yes, they synthesize familial genetics with the child's foundational bone structure. But really, the true power of an age-progressed photo lies in the permanent markers.
The scars, like we talked about earlier.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, hair color can be dyed, weight fluctuates over the years, but the scar under the chin, the scar between the eyebrows, and the scar on the upper lip do not change.
They are permanent.
Yes. Missing child organizations distribute these photos because they bypass the name completely. If Zachary was taken and raised under a new identity, you wouldn't respond if someone yelled, "Zachary Bernhardt."
Right, because that's not his name anymore.
Exactly. But a coworker, a neighbor, or a security guard might look at an age-progressed poster and recognize that specific, unique constellation of facial scars on a 34-year-old man.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We are looking at an Amber Alert that has never been deactivated. It highlights the agonizing reality of the long-term missing.
It's a heavy reality.
It really is. Cases that stretch into decades without physical evidence are rarely solved by a sudden DNA breakthrough in a sterile lab. They're usually solved by an observant citizen.
Just a regular person paying attention.
Right. Someone who hears a deep dive like this remembers those 3 distinct scars and connects the dots to a guy they see every day at the grocery store.
And the core insights from our sources really paint a stark picture of how fragile reality can be. Zachary's disappearance is a masterclass in how a microscopic 15-minute window can spawn decades of investigative paralysis.
Decades of just nothing.
Yeah. It demonstrates how public scrutiny can permanently dismantle a family's life regardless of legal guilt. And most importantly, it proves that the absence of evidence simply leaves the door open to terrifying possibilities, demanding we reconsider how we view the safety of our own environments.
But, we mentioned earlier that the statistics are grim, but they are not entirely hopeless.
Not entirely, no.
Because the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children explicitly states that 151 children have been recovered after being missing for a decade or longer.
151. And the mechanisms of those recoveries are fascinating. They rarely involve dramatic police rescue.
Oh, really? How does it usually happen?
Often, it's just a bureaucratic tripwire. A young adult applies for a driver's license, or submits a college financial aid application, or even gets pulled over for a routine traffic stop. And a flagged Social Security number suddenly triggers a database alert.
Wow. Just regular life admin brings them home.
Exactly. People do come back from the void.
Which leaves us with this final thought to mull over. If Zachary Bernhardt is out there right now, living a completely new life under a different name with a fabricated history, does he even know he is Florida's longest-running Amber Alert?
Probably not.
Right. And what happens to a person's mind when their entire foundational identity has been erased and replaced? Could he one day just be scrolling online, see an age-progressed photo, and simply recognize his own face looking back at him?
It's haunting to think about.
It is. And it all traces back to one Florida night, a sleeping boy, and a door left unlocked for just 15 minutes.